So I've been recently using this new habit of mine where I start to track every single one of my finances. And this has helped me a lot better instead of actually using a simple budget, even though budgeting has no issues and I think it is important. But I think honestly tracking your finances is even more important. And let me explain why. As I was tracking my finances for the last 30 days, I found some things that were very important to know. Obviously when you're budgeting, you try to have things in place, and make sure you don't go over those budgets. However, when you track everything and you kind of see it from month to month, you kind of see how things tend to change. And let me say, for instance, you might have a grocery budget, and that grocery budget, you're doing well, you're making sure you're hitting your budget, and you're not going over. However, there might be certain months where you might have not gone over in your budget for grocery shopping, however, you went over your budget for going out to eat. Or vice versa, you went over your budget going out to eat, but because you checked and tracked your finances, you're able to shorten your spending for your grocery shopping budget. At least in my experience, that's what's helped me a lot with tracking my finances. It also allows me to not make too many dumb decisions because when you actually write stuff down and see what you're spending, you kind of start to look and be like, man, I don't want to have to add something like this again to my notebook and have this on here because this is embarrassing. So at least for me, that's how I feel. Tracking your finances, writing it down. And then for me, I write it all together. I'll put, a weekly spending, then I'll do the monthly spending and see and compare the different months. So right now we're in April. And so I'll, check back for March and see what I spent all in March. And then I'll also go ahead by the end of April and check April. And doing this has allowed me to figure out exactly some things that either I was spending money on or that I shouldn't be. And then also just like how much things actually add up. And also too, it let me learn like what my spending is on week to week. For me, I got to see just what my spending is like, say for instance, on week 1 of the month. Now for me, week 1 of the month is always going to be my biggest week of spending because that's the week when rent is due. That's the week when my car payment is due. That's the week when most of my like bigger bills, I set all of them up to be paid off in the first week. My phone bill is on the first week. Electric bills on the first week. So all those things are all in the first week. So usually that's my highest expense week, usually every month. But then it's so interesting because after the first week, the second week is usually always the smallest. And the second week usually has no bills to pay, nothing at all. And so unless I go out and just spend it recklessly, all that money is really just can go towards, saving up either for rent again or paying off a debt, anything in that case. And so I think that's really nice to see, knowing that I'm keeping up. And sometimes I like to compare and see, like, what did I do in the second week of this month compared to a second week in a month a few months ago. And to make sure that, I'm spending kind of the same amount of money. It kind of allows me too to not go past lifestyle inflation and, see things like, oh, I was spending more now because of, certain circumstances like, oh, I don't have much credit card debt anymore like I did in the past. So therefore, I can spend my money. Like seeing all these different things, it allows me now to notice and be like, oh, like I'm keeping track. I'm spending the same amount of money that I would have 6 months ago, give or take. And so that's one of the biggest added benefits for me is seeing these type of changes and making sure that I'm following a consistent model. So when I do eventually get for a higher paying job or make more money on the side, then I'm able to now see how much money I'm spending and making sure I'm keeping that amount the same. And lifestyle inflation is definitely a huge thing. I'm still trying to get myself prepped and prepared for it when the time does come and I make more money, because as we know in this economy, things continue to change and, really get worse. And so, in lifestyle inflation, sometimes you end up doing a lot more things differently than you thought. And so I just want to make sure that I'm prepared. And then also too, in tracking my finances, like, of course you have credit cards and things that you can spend, but I've really been focusing right now on just making sure I'm spending really mainly with just my debit card for certain things and not allowing my credit cards to stack up. And even too, I have a calendar at home and I write all my debts on my calendar so I can see what price they're currently at in the moment. So I can wake up and always see those prices so I know like, hey, you want to add to that price today or do you want to lower it? And keeping those on my wall allows me to make sure that I'm keeping track of what is there and how much it actually is. Because you can ask people like, oh, like how much debt do you have? And some people can't answer that. They don't know, or what's your interest rate? And people don't know. And so for me, I've always made sure to, be aware of knowing what the price is, knowing what the interest rate is, and seeing it in real time. So that way I can know, whether I want to add to this or I want to lower it. And so that's so important for me. And I don't really have too much credit card debt. It's pretty low, but I do have a card payment that I'm working on paying off this year, and plan on, talking about the journey and process on this channel. So look out for that in the future. But I really want to make sure that I'm tracking my finances, I'm doing the right things, and I'm just keeping myself stable as well. Keep myself happy through it, making sure I'm not doing anything that would make me too depressed, as I talked about in my last video. And just, making sure I have the right structure and system placed for me. And for me, tracking my finances has been a lot better than a simple budget, because I don't know, sometimes for me, and it's weird, and I might be tripping, but I feel like sometimes, nah, this isn't tripping, I would say sometimes your income can change a bit based off of how the months are. Like some months, of course, there's usually 4 weeks in a month, but sometimes some months end up having 5 weeks. Or sometimes the week ends on a Monday or the week ends on a Thursday. And that changes a lot, because depending on when you get paid, you might have 4 extra days where you're able to get paid in a month compared to the month before where you wouldn't. And that's 4 days of income differently than, before. Now, if you did everything on a yearly basis, sure, you'd have everything tied up. But on a monthly basis, things change. Like you might make a certain amount of money. Let's say you made $3,000 a month, in February. February only has 28 days. Let's say now you go to March. March has, I think, 31 days. From there, that's 3 extra days of money that you're making. And let's say March ended on a Sunday or whatever day it ended, and you got paid Friday, you got paid 2 days before the month ended. So that was an extra paycheck compared to where if it was a week shorter, you wouldn't have gotten paid till April. And those things help out a lot. And tracking your finances allows you to see things like that and notice what weeks are shorter. Especially the first week usually is always pretty short, or it can be longer, causing the last week in the month being shorter. And so these are all important things, and it's helped me a lot with tracking every dollar that I spent. And I think it helped a lot of people too. Seeing exactly where every money is going, every single dollar, literally even the $2 things that you're spending. I remember I used to spend so much money on the vending machine at my job, getting snacks and stuff like that. And in the moment, you're like, oh, this is just like $2, $3. This is nothing. But if you do that 5 times a week, if you work, 5 days a week, that can add up to $15 a week, which then adds up to $60 a month. And can you imagine what $60 a month would go to? That could literally be paying off your credit card right now. $60 a month right there going to credit cards. So you just gotta think about stuff like that. Obviously you don't want to always be like a spreadsheet, because finances aren't always like that. They're not so, economically like that. Sometimes they can be a lot more personal, and we all make mistakes, and sometimes we'll continue to make small mistakes, but it's more so capitalizing on those mistakes and not, letting it dig a hole too much where you can't come back from. And I think this is a very important lesson to do, and I hope you guys definitely take into it and make sure that we're on this journey of improving our finances. I definitely want to thank you guys for watching the video. If you got this far, please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.